And good morning, I'm Gary Demas, and Jamie Broslovsky's here. We are the Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show, right, Jamie?
That's right, here we are.
Okay, and we come here even in the worst of weather, middle of winter, you name it.
That's right.
We are here.
Trekked in this morning.
That's right. Our four-wheel drive vehicles and plowed through everything.
Yeah, that's what snow mode is for.
Snow mode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so last week, those of you who are listening, if you had a chance to listen, we talked about the do's and don'ts of remodeling, right, Jamie?
That's right.
So if you want to know what to do and what not to do, you can go to Dave Fox Radio. And what happens then, Jamie, when they go there?
Yeah, you'll be able to find all of our previous recorded podcasts, as well as any of the YouTube videos that we've recorded, such as we're doing right now. And those are all on there, and you can watch and you can listen and join our show.
Exactly. So, do's and don'ts of remodeling. So we had a good discussion, and like we do every Sunday morning, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so if any of you ever want to reach Jamie or I or our company, you can just email info@davefox.com, and we would love to respond to you. Occasionally we'll get emails asking all kinds of things. Maybe they heard a suggestion or heard us talking about colors and want samples and this and that. Who knows? But if you have any questions or any ideas for us, we'd love to hear from you. So that's info@davefox.com. Of course, you can go to our website, davefox.com, and there you can see a lot of information about our company, a lot of really cool, not so many, we don't have videos on our website, do we?
No, we don't have videos on our website, other than if you go to the radio show section and watch these recorded shows.
So what's the matter with us, Jamie? Why don't we have any really cool videos?
Well, we keep our videos on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. You can find our videos. So
okay, what if they get censored?
What if they? That shouldn't happen.
Well, okay, I hope not. We have to be careful what we say here, or we could get nixed right off of YouTube.
Oh, yeah, real quick, yeah.
Okay. So today, our topic is...
Room additions.
Room additions. So that's a pretty broad topic, Jamie.
Yes, it is. So just additions of any kind, really.
Even if we just talked about all the kinds of additions we've ever done.
We could fill an hour for sure.
Yeah, maybe a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about, and maybe, I don't know, this might end up being more than just this show, right?
Yeah, it could be, definitely. I mean, we're going to go over different types of room additions, things to consider, finding the right contractor for them, maybe go over some things that kind of impact the cost of room additions. So we're going to dive deep and see how far we can get. And yeah, maybe we'll do another show on it, another follow-up show.
Yeah. So maybe somebody's listening this morning and they aren't thinking about doing a room addition. Are they still going to have information that will be helpful to them in our discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I hope anyways, anytime you're listening to our show, it might not be exactly what you're thinking about doing or exactly what you're thinking about doing right then, but there's always tips and ideas and things that, especially if you happen to be in your home while you're listening to the show, while you look around, you're going to think, gosh, I hadn't thought of that, or that's a really interesting idea, or I wonder if I could do that. And, kind of just makes you think about your home and the way you live in your home, and you'll definitely get some good tips and tricks and things to look out for. You might be in a home that had an addition done previously, and you're wondering, did they do that right? Things like that. So definitely a lot of information, good information for any homeowner.
Yeah,
or
good points.
Going to be homeowner.
Sure. And as we talk about the different types of additions, we'll talk about maybe some of the design pointers, some things that are important in certain types of additions, and maybe how they may fit on a home, how they interact with the rest of your floor plan, which is really crucial. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so which one do you want to start with?
Well, let's start by talking about some different types of room additions.
Okay.
I think a lot of times initially when you think of a room addition, you think of adding on a sunroom or a screened porch or anything like that, which we get quite a bit of phone calls asking about doing those types of projects and additions. But then there's also, the larger additions. Maybe you're expanding the whole back of your home, or you're adding a second story, or, additions can mean so many different things. Or maybe you're just, we've had a lot of floor plans where the kitchen and dining room are not the same kind of line in the back of the house and you're expanding your kitchen into your dining room. So we just bump out the kitchen or bump out the dining room so that they match up to make a more seamless space. So those types of bumps are also considered additions and can be extremely impactful in the space.
Yeah, especially in a kitchen, where I think we talked about this last week maybe, or the week before, about how a lot of times when people are thinking about adding on in their mind, they're usually thinking way more space than they really need.
Yeah.
Of course, they've got a goal to accomplish. Maybe it's maybe they want an island in their kitchen, and right now the floor plan's too small, or maybe they just need more room. Maybe the family's bigger, or they're in the house more, or they entertain a lot. So a lot of times people will think, well, I need to add 8 feet on, I need to add 10 feet, I need to add 12 feet, when a lot of times all of their goals can be accomplished by adding maybe half of that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a bump out is a good way to get 2, 3, 4 feet. And in a kitchen, it can make an absolutely dramatic difference. People are amazed at how it can just revolutionize their kitchen and turn it into something they never dreamed could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it's just, in opening up the space to another room, or, a lot of times we'll maybe bump out the family room and a kitchen. And that's your main living space of your home. So it completely changes every aspect of your home.
Yeah, exactly. Adding a depth of vision has a huge impact on just our psyche as we're in our home. I remember years ago, Jamie, when I lived in Findlay, Ohio, we bought a small house. It was our first house back when the interest rates were like 16.5% or something.
Crazy.
But over the few years, we did a lot of work on that house. And one of the things we did is added a family room off the kitchen. So we opened up as much as we could from the kitchen into the family room. And it was, like 24 feet by maybe 16 or something, a good sized family room. Mm-hmm. But what really surprised me was how just standing in the kitchen and having that depth of vision into that family room from the kitchen made the house feel twice as big. And it's just amazing how just that depth of vision can change how you feel about your space. And even as you mentioned, sometimes we'll take a kitchen and dining room and remove the wall in the middle. You'll get kind of the same effect there, because when your vision is blocked by a bunch of walls, your space is calculated and confined. But
yeah,
if you have depth of vision, even if it's looking through a doorway into another room that you add, it really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I think a floor plan in general plays such a big factor into kind of how the home feels and things like that. But I think especially when you're talking about adding on just a few feet, I think when you're lining things up that weren't lined up previously and opening them, it feels like a completely different space altogether, for sure. Another one we get asked a lot about is adding in-law suites. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to do that to the first floor of their home if they're having in-laws move in, and first floor is really helpful, obviously, for aging in place. And then also, moving a first floor master to the first floor, or moving a master to the first floor to make it a first floor. Again, aging in space. And a lot of those types of additions are really great if you love your home, you don't want to move. Realtor fees are expensive. Moving is expensive. Saving that money and putting it into making your space kind of just everything that you've wanted and have been missing.
Sure. Yeah, it is. Just moving expenses do add up, and you can just apply that money directly to improving your own house and adding space in there. And as you said, the in-law suites, which typically would be a sleeping area and a nice bath area, and maybe a little kitchenette. Sometimes we've done that. And there's a number of ways to do that. Sometimes adding where you may add a family room to your home instead, it becomes this in-law suite. Or we've actually converted garages to in-law suites and added on another garage.
We also did one, I remember, that we converted their formal living room and dining room into an in-law suite.
Yeah. So a lot of different options here when we talk about room additions, and that's our topic today. So if you're listening, hang in there. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get right back into it. Okay, so today our topic is room additions, Jamie, and we're talking about the different types of room additions that we do, which is anything that anybody can imagine. I don't know if we've done everything. Maybe somebody will come up with something we've never done before. It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah. You never can tell what's going to happen in the remodeling business.
Yeah.
So we've talked about in the first break, in case you're just tuning in, we talked about, we were kind of ending that last segment on in-law suites, Jamie. And
Yeah, and all the different type of room additions. I had mentioned one where we took over the formal living room and formal dining room and created almost like an in-law apartment. So the formal living room kind of stayed a living room space, and the dining room became the bedroom. And then we added just a bathroom off the side of the house there for their in-law to move in. And they had their own little kind of apartment there. And, the formal living rooms and dining rooms anymore, most people live a more casual lifestyle that don't utilize those spaces as much. So even though they had brought us out for a full room addition, we had kind of approached the subject of that as an option, and they loved it. And just adding on that bathroom just made it a completely livable space, which was really cool.
Yeah, there's so many different ways of doing it. And also on the financial aspect, the cost of this, we find oftentimes that if you're bringing in a parent or parents, a lot of times they'll sell the home they're in and use that money to add the space onto existing home. Yeah. So that works out really well a lot of times.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just so great for the parents too to have the care with their family right there.
Oh yeah. I just try and get my parents to move to Columbus. They don't need to move in my house. That's a little much, but Columbus would be great. Yeah. But yeah, all sorts of different types of things to add on. We've even done a mudroom edition, which I thought was really interesting, but I have a mudroom and I can't fathom the thought of not, I think it was not a very popular part of a floor plan for older homes. And so we've created spaces within or moved laundry to other rooms of the house or places in the house, things like that. But we did do one addition that was actually adding on a full mudroom. And although an expensive way to get it, it's such a practical use and something that you utilize every single day that makes it worth it.
Yeah. And those mudrooms often is with pets and how people love their pets so much. A lot of times there will be a little bathing area for a pet or maybe a really cool stand for the cat to climb up on to be fed. Or it's really, people get very creative with their animals and what they do in some of the additions that we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. It's funny how often the pets are taken under consideration for the projects that we do. Sometimes a little bit and sometimes completely. Yeah. But yeah. So other than the types of room additions, there's a lot of things to consider when you're doing a room addition. One of those, the main things probably is your property lines. Can you even do an addition where your home is at? When you're looking at homes in areas like German Village, especially where things are very, very tight, can you add on? Can you add up or can you add out? Things like that. And then when you do add on, do you want a crawl space? Do you want a full basement? Things like that. Or there's a lot to consider with all that.
Yeah, the zoning issues and property line issues is something that we really look at when we first talk to a potential client about adding an addition, because that is really crucial. We can't, people don't want us designing something that can't be built, right?
Right.
So we want to make sure that we have a really good chance of building. So we have Brenda in the office who, one of her roles is just to do that. She checks property lines and she checks with zoning departments and building departments really. And it varies so much around the city with all the different municipalities. They all have little different ideas on that. And Upper Arlington has certain guidelines and rules. Gahanna has theirs. German Village can be very strict with their building commission there. And Victorian Village and some of those areas. We've had a number, in the really strict areas, we've had a number of clients come to us with ideas that just would not be permitted. But it gets a lot easier in some of the other areas. And usually there's a way to find a way. And it's working with the commissions or the zoning departments and looking at setbacks. And sometimes we have to get into the variance issue, which a lot of times isn't as maybe painstaking as people may think it is, because that happens quite often. And we have pretty good success rate on variances if they make sense. And of course, we want anything that we do to make sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like you said, the creativity with it, there's typically more than one way to obtain whatever your goal or dream is for your home. One that comes to mind in German Village, they wanted to add on a master suite. And you never hear the words German Village and Master Suite in the same sentence because there's not room for one. But they had lived in their home a very long time and wanted to spend the rest of their lives in that home. So aging in place there was important to them. And the stairs were very steep and things like that. And so although we weren't able to get a first floor master suite added on just because of space and things like that, we were able to add it on to the second story and then also add on an elevator. And I thought that was a really, really cool solution to that space. And to be able to still age in space, stay in their home, stay in the heart of German Village where they loved, but still get everything on their wish list just in a different way than they originally intended.
Yeah, the residential elevators have become a fairly large thing here recently because, number one, more people, I think, are bringing their parents into their homes. And I can think of situations where the only thing we did in a home is add the elevator.
Yeah.
That's all. That was their need for their elderly parent to get up to the second floor.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be pretty doggone challenging. An elevator has to have a place to enter and exit on multiple levels.
Right.
And it goes straight up. They don't go at angles.
No.
So you've got to
That'd be a weird elevator ride.
You have to be able to look straight down through however many floor plans this elevator is going to reach and figure out a way for it to work and have an entry and an exit at each level. So that can be pretty challenging. There's times when we've had to actually add it to the exterior of the home, the elevator shaft. But a lot of times we try to find a way, and if there's like multiple or a large stairway going up, a lot of times that creates some space for an elevator. But that can be pretty challenging, but it is, we've done a number of projects like that, and others where they're doing other remodeling plus the elevator, which that usually makes it a little more easy because then we're already changing walls in the house and we have the opportunity to do a little layout change just to make that elevator work.
Yeah. So how would a general consumer, Gary, find out about their property lines?
Okay, well, anybody could call the building department, whatever municipality they're in, and they're very helpful people. There will be somebody there that's good with zoning and can give you ideas. Of course, if you're talking to us or any other larger remodeling firm, they're going to have ways of determining that as well. And that always has to happen up front. That's one of the first things you've got to discover is this idea even doable? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I would imagine that that's a challenge that comes up frequently. For me, one thing when we look at a house, I always say we need a 3-car garage because we have 3 kids and there's too many bikes and everything else. I like to park in the garage because
and when Oscar gets
the weather
his boat,
outside.
You're going to.
Oh, sure, yeah, that's never happening. Didn't you hear me say we had 3 kids? But yeah, so if it's only 2, I always think, okay, well, you could add on a third bay to the garage and things like that, but you always have to look at that property line because when they build homes, they put them, typically in the center of the lot, not in anticipation of an addition and things like that. So it's definitely a big factor with any addition is the property lines.
Yeah, I think anybody thinking about any of these things, we're happy to go out in an initial consultation. There's no charge for that, to help people explore their ideas and see if they're feasible. And a lot of times we'll kind of maybe know right offhand if it's going to be a zoning issue or even close to it. And if not, we can certainly check that out. But ideas are great. That's what keeps us all going. And adding space, fixing the needs that people have in their homes is what we're here for, Jamie. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break. And after that, let's get back into some more room additions.
All right.
And you're listening to the Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show, and we are here every Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, and glad to have you tuned in this morning on our third segment. And Jamie, we're talking about room additions today, so anybody that's just tuning in, we've covered just some of the varieties of room additions that people put on.
Yeah.
And some of the obstacles that you may face at first. We talked about how it's important to talk about zoning, make sure that your ideas can actually be passed through the zoning department, or if there's a variance involved, what is the likelihood of that happening? And we will take a stab at it. We'll guess. Sometimes we're wrong, but that's kind of the way it goes. And we just have to meet all the different criterias that we run up against in the remodeling industry.
Yeah. I think, after you get kind of passed over those big hurdles of the property lines and looking at your HOA and your zoning rules and regulations, specifically for room additions, another thing to consider is depending on how much square footage you're adding, this can impact your property taxes. And if you're adding a lot of square footage, it might really impact them. So, being prepared for that and factoring that into your cost of the project, I think is also important.
Yeah, obviously that's going to happen, and it's part of life. When you buy a nice brand new car, you pay a lot of sales tax on it, right?
Yeah.
Taxes here, and that's what keeps all the grease on the wheels. But just when going through the permitting process is what alerts the state or city, about the property taxes.
Yeah.
That's just part of the ball game.
Yeah. Yep, definitely is. So when we add on to a home and we're looking at different ways to tie the addition into the home, the roof is obviously a big factor in that. What would you say is the most common kind of, I guess, style or way to continue a roof or kind of go over that hurdle of tying it in?
Yeah. Yeah, that can be a real challenge at times, depending on where the addition's at and what type of roof is on the existing structure. Obviously, our goal is to make sure that our addition looks like it belongs on the house and looks like it's always been there. It's funny because I remember years ago, I worked for a client that was from one of the New England states, and there it was kind of charming because way back, people would add an addition on and it would look different in the house. And they'd add another one on and that would look different. And they'd add another one on and that would look different. And pretty soon they got to the barn. So it was solid additions from the house to the barn. But that was kind of a New England-y cultural thing. And he actually wanted his addition to look completely different than the house just because it reminded him of that.
Yeah.
But that's very rare. Most of the time, we want the addition to just blend right in, the roof lines to blend in so it looks like it was designed that way from the get-go. And the challenges are going to be how large the addition is. A lot of times if someone wants to put a real large family room across the back and maybe it spans 25, 30 feet across the back of the home, and if it's a gable home and it's got a high-pitched roof, then if you match the pitch of the roof and put a huge gable on that addition, it would be covering up windows on the second floor.
Right.
Or if it's a ranch house, maybe the peak would be sticking up higher than the peak on the front of the house. So there's a lot of things like that we run into, and we can typically come up with creative ideas and ways to deal with that. But it can be very challenging. And I'm thinking about even in our drafting programs, roofing is one of the hardest things to render and to get it to play out right. And I remember going in, I'll go in multiple of our design staff's offices and they're struggling with the roof. Gary, can you help me with this thing? And, but it can be challenging in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And even in the structure of the building and framing of roofing can be challenging. But the goal is to match gutter lines, which is an important part of it. Your eaves have to be at the same height so that the gutter drains evenly. Mm-hmm. Your overhangs need to match the height. The ceiling heights in the house need to match. So there's a lot that goes into the roofing.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're kind of talking with clients and they're sharing what their goals of the new space are, what the intention with adding on might be, how is the decision made typically for should they go up or should they go out, or where that addition might be? What are some of the things that you've come across with different projects and kind of client needs? Yeah.
Really knowing what their needs are, the priority list helps a lot with that. So let's say they want to add some more space to the kitchen below and they need another bedroom above. So, a 2-story addition out the back usually works in that scenario.
Yeah.
So that can be a challenge too, because that 2nd-story new master bedroom suite has to work with the floor plan up there. So sometimes locating where that's going to be or knowing how you're going to redesign that floor plan upstairs in the most efficient manner, because we don't want to just go in there and tear a whole bunch of stuff out that's there already and add to the expense. good design is going to make the most efficient use of the existing space that you have, but still accomplish your goals. So that's actually what's so fun about this industry, I think, is it's a puzzle. It's challenging, and you've got to be creative. And when we create the what we call as-built floor plans first and have those on our computers and are looking at those on the monitors, then we can see the first floor, the second floor on these floor plans, and it really helps us to lay those out. Where when we're in the house and just looking at a house we've never seen before, and we try to remember what's underneath us on the first floor, and when we're on the second floor, and the client's saying, "Can we do this?" Well, let me think. What was the first floor like? It's so much easier for us to do that stuff in our design studio when we can see everything at once.
Yeah.
So sometimes we'll kind of hem-haw around, well, I need to work on this a little bit, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, because got to be able to put all these pieces together.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember actually one project we did that I thought was really cool was we expanded the kitchen into a breezeway, but they had hoped and intended to someday in the future also expand their master suite. It was a little too much of a project for them to do all at once, but knowing that and kind of knowing that long-term goal, we were able to do that kitchen expansion and do the roof so it was ready for a second story someday. So when they went back to do that, it was kind of a lot of the legwork was already done.
Exactly, yeah, because whenever anyone has multiple projects in mind, which happens frequently just because of budget issues, not always because of budget, but a lot of times, it's good to design the whole thing, and we'll highly encourage the client, go ahead, let's design the whole thing, how it's going to end up. That way you're not shooting yourself in the foot by doing a bunch of work that has to be redone later.
Right.
So there again is the efficiency thing. Remodeling is expensive, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and people go through that process, and there's wear and tear on you, on your emotions when your house is torn up for a long period of time. So efficiency in every regard is really crucial, and I think any good remodeling company is going to put that right at the top of their list of priorities, is to make sure you've got an efficient floor plan that is laid out and working with the existing house just as closely as it possibly can be. And then if it's a multi-stage project, make sure that whatever you do in stage one has the minimal amount of interference with what you're going to do in stage two.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, when you're adding on to your home or really any project, it goes so much further than just whatever you're working on, tying it in character-wise, not only to your home, tying in the flooring, you want to, kind of keep that in mind as well. But then also the character, not only of your home, but of your neighborhood. There's some streets like in Upper Arlington, for example, where every single house on the street is, a ranch. And then there's one kind of really big 2-story house, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And I think actually Upper Arlington, I believe, has kind of tightened up their restrictions on being able to do that just because of that. Because it kind of hurts the character a little bit of the whole street when there's one really different.
Yeah, that's all part of the deal, and it's part of the curb appeal. And you just hope that your neighbor doesn't paint their house chartreuse or something like that, or put it on their garage door. But yeah, our designers are great, and they're professionals, and they're going to make sure that whatever we do really fits with the house and the neighborhood. All that's important. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, Jamie, today we're talking about room additions.
That's right.
And here we are on our final segment. So if anybody's just tuning in, man, you missed a lot of good information. So you better go to davefoxradio.com, and there you can listen to everything we've talked about up to now, right, Jimmy?
That's right. You can kind of scroll back through, listen to previously recorded shows, watch our videos if you want to watch my hands move a lot while I talk. And then, we're all there, and this one will be there today.
Good deal. So room additions. What we were talking a little bit about curb appeal outside, that the addition matches not only the house, but also the house kind of ties in with the neighborhood. So I think most neighbors, when they see a Dave Fox sign go up, they're happy and excited about what their neighbor's doing, right?
Oh, I would think so. I would be really happy to see that level of improvement being done on a home in my neighborhood. I think it really gives the whole neighborhood more value in a sense. One of my favorite things I see is if I'm looking at like, real estate listings or anything like that, and they say that it was a Dave Fox remodel.
Yeah.
Not just a remodel. It was a Dave Fox remodel. That's like one of my favorite things to see on a real estate listing of a project that we had done years ago. That's always a special thing. But I think you're right. I mean, I think when there's a sign in the yard of a name that you recognize and hopefully trust, that speaks volumes. But I think especially with room additions, finding the right contractor and kind of the contractor knowing the right things to do and ask and how to manage an addition is especially important. Not just necessarily being really handy and good. A good trim carpenter doesn't necessarily the right person to use for your room addition, things like that.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the things that a remodeling contractor has to consider when they're putting an addition on. Of course, we already talked about the zoning and property lines, and that's step one. And
Yes.
That has to be predetermined. We have to have our clients provide us with a site plan that has all the different setbacks and items on it.
Yeah.
And then we can work off of that and work with whatever municipality we're in. We'll work with the zoning department there. And let's say you mentioned if you have 2-car garage and you want to add a third car, and how sometimes that can be tricky with zoning. So let's say that's the kind of project we're working on. Well, we're going to determine, number one, how the driveway is going to work and how the car is going to maneuver in and out of that 3rd-car garage. Number two, what size does it need to be, and then how is it going to infringe on any particular setbacks or zoning issues? And if it doesn't infringe, that's great. If it does, then what's the possibility of getting a variance for that? And
Right.
a lot of times we'll talk to the zoning departments and say, hey, do you have have you seen any other projects in the area that got a variance for this type of an issue? And they'll say, well, yeah, I can think of this one or that one. Or they'll say, well, no, and I'm not really so sure you're going to have much luck with that.
Yeah.
So we never know for sure until all is said and done. But we try to get the best picture, the best idea that we possibly can.
Yeah.
And
I think too, not only having like the contractor knowing all of that stuff, but having gone through it before, we have those relationships built with the building departments, and being able to have that open dialogue is really important and can be impactful on the project and things like that. But I would caution someone being a guinea pig, being the first addition someone has done. What was the first addition you ever did? Probably on your own home, I'm guessing. Hoping, I don't know.
Not exactly, but close.
Close.
But when I started in business, I was very naive, and I learned a lot over a lot of years. Did some things way back then that I feel very embarrassed about now.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I'm not the man I was. I'll say that many years ago.
Yeah. So then I guess you can agree that make sure it's not someone's first room addition.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's their first, I would insist they did it on their own home or their dad's home or somebody else's, not yours.
Start with a family member, maybe.
Permitting, is an issue.
Yeah.
Getting the right permits. And like you said, having a good rapport with the building departments is important. And we try really hard to do that. And I think a lot of the inspectors and building departments have a lot of respect for us because they know we're not going to try shortcuts or try to hide anything.
Yeah.
But it's funny, even with that being said, and truly that's how we are. I mean, we're going to do whatever they want, and we can do something that's perfectly safe and meets all the codes as far as we see it, but some inspector will go there and come up with some idea that he doesn't like, and he'll make us change it. And okay, we'll change it.
Yeah.
So even as hard as we try, we'd like to have, never happened. We kind of like to have carte blanche with these people saying, come on, trust us. We know what we're doing. Well, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
But anyhow, we get along really good with everyone.
Although we did get, there was maybe 2 last year. We got calls for projects from people that worked in the building department.
Yeah.
For their own personal homes. And, you figure they're looking at every permit being pulled, and they did call us to do their own home. So they have to have some level of trust there, even if they don't let us do whatever we want.
Okay, so see, that's interesting because I wasn't aware of that. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. We'll have to find their names, and this way when they give us a hard time, we can be like, well, we know you trust us.
Yeah, that's right.
Because.
Okay. Engineering is another issue. A lot of times people are maybe adding onto the back of house and taking out a bunch of the existing wall, which is load-bearing wall. So it might be carrying a second floor. It's definitely going to be carrying some roof load. Or we might be making a large opening inside the home in a load-bearing wall that, again, might be carrying a second floor or roof loading. So the engineering part of it is very critical and important. Not only getting it engineered, but also having the manpower and expertise to pull off whatever the engineer draws up. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that can be very challenging. Sometimes it can include very large beams, heavy beams that have to be maneuvered inside of a home and lifted up into place safely so it doesn't damage the house or injure anyone.
Yeah.
So we've gotten into some really tricky situations and have had to be very creative on how to get beams into place safely so that all of our men were protected and the house was protected. So some of those things can be quite challenging, but again, that's what makes it all fun.
Yeah. And so who comes into play when you're looking at adding on to the home and you have to take things into consideration, like the property drainage and things like that? If you're kind of encroaching on any easements or anything like that, how do we figure that out?
Yeah, drainage, that's a good question, because that has become more and more of an issue with the local building departments. Years ago, they never considered it.
Really?
You just build and whatever happens, happens. Well, now it's totally different. Because just like you said, you don't want runoff. Maybe you're putting an addition up and you're building a lot of grade up to your addition. And if it's going to divert a bunch of water to your neighbor's lot, that's not good.
Right.
So the building departments are very engaged in making sure that water retention and drainage is done appropriately. And that's really good. I mean, sometimes we'll have to put in swales that will retain water, or make sure that all of the drainage is done just right so that we don't have those issues. So that's another kind of an engineering side of things that has to be taken into consideration in a lot of additions.
And I think another thing that's important to remember when you're planning an addition project is when that addition is done, you want the landscaping to match the rest of the home as well. And, we partner with Greenscapes, but making sure that that's kind of thought through, not only for your plan, but also for your budget, to make sure that's all accounted for.
Yeah, so there's a lot to take in with adding a room addition, and it does take a lot of expertise and training, and we love doing that. So it's been a great show this morning, Jamie. It's been nice chatting with you about room additions. We hope everyone that's listening has enjoyed it, and we just invite you to come back here every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. We're here every Sunday. The Dave Fox Home Remodeling Show, and we love serving the city and all the people in the city, and we're here to bring your dreams to life. So we will be back here next Sunday morning at 8.